Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mama Genius Hub podcast. We got Kristina today, and we're going to dive into the conversation of education. So I'm just going to start by introducing her. She's utilized 27 years of professional public school classroom teaching, a love of technology, and a passion for helping students achieve their highest potential, possibly genius in there, because Kristina is blazing a new trail, combining her love of education with her entrepreneurship experience and self-development. She co-founded Vibrant Family Education with her husband, which brings so much needed unique perspective in the reimagining education for the whole child. We're going to dive into that, into the child genius, and all of that today. Welcome, Kristina. We're so happy to have you on today.
Thank you so much. I am so glad to be here, Michelle. We've been talking for a while, and it's just like, yes, it's time to have this discussion because our families need this. Let's talk about education and let's see what we can do to reimagine and make it work for the whole family.
And that's why we're here. We're like, how do we bring the genius out in our child? So let's just go back for a second and ask, what is your why for wanting to do all this? Where did it come from?
Well, it was really interesting how this all developed with me because as a classroom teacher for 27 years, I was in the classroom, I was working with the kids. I absolutely loved being a teacher. But then the last few years, things have changed. The programs have changed, the requirements have changed, what teachers have to teach and how strict they have to teach to curriculum and things like that has really, really changed over time. And then this whole thing called COVID happened, right? And we know that changed a whole bunch of things. But the beauty of that, there's really a big silver lining there, was that I was able to transfer to the online school during that time. Now, this wasn't the COVID school where all the teachers and all the kids were trying to figure out all the video stuff, right? This was the actual online school for my school district. And while I was there, I helped develop the kindergarten through second grade program for the online school. And a lot of people are like, wait a second, kindergartners and second graders, they can't learn online. Well, they can with a dedicated teacher and a dedicated parent. But like I said, the thing that really evolved out of that for me was that I was doing more coaching than teaching at that point because, of course, the child was in the home with the parent. And what I found was this beautiful connection between teacher, between parent, between child, and we really could make a difference in the child's life. And I was coaching and doing those things that impacted the family. So talking about scheduling, talking about how to make the learning a little bit more fun than just watching a video on the computer, those kinds of things. And I realized that even though I love teaching in the school, it wasn't the place I needed to be anymore. I need to be on the outside of the school district. I need to be connecting with families, helping these families realize that they can do more with their child's education. And when I say education, it's not just reading, writing, and math. There's so much more to it than that. And we'll get there, right? Anyway, but I was like, it's time for me to do something different and really make an impact with families where they are in the home for the family, for the child. So that's kind of where all of this came from.
So are you still working then with the virtual aspect of the school district, or are you working with homeschooling parents, or combination of both, or?
Right. Oh, I'm not working with the school district anymore. I left completely. I'm like, I'm just done. It's time for me to go and blaze my own trail and do this. But whenever I start talking with families about how to educate their child at home, I definitely bring in the online component because that's one of the things I want to talk about is that a lot of parents think that I can't be my child's educator, right? You're leading completely into exactly what I wanted to talk about. And it's like, yes, you can. Actually, you are the first best educator for your child because you know them. You know their quirks, you know their sleep schedules, you know all of these things that really make a child thrive, right? You know that they're active in the morning, so that's their best learning time, or you're active in the afternoon and that's their best learning time. And so that all of those things combined. But then you might be like, I wasn't very good in school myself. I struggled in reading. I struggled in math. I don't think I have the skills to be able to help my child through that part. Well, that's when I bring in either more coaching with me or online education, because the online model can do a lot of that teaching for you. And you're there to guide and mold and help your child through, but they have the basics and then you just kind of like reinforce and check in. Yeah.
I love that in terms of just, it's a new way of looking at it, and a new way that also, I mean, I was an educator too, as well. And COVID had us homeschooling for a year as well, but they are back in school
Yeah.
based on our family needs.
Yeah.
But it really opened my eyes to new possibilities that I did not see before. And so that's why I really wanted to bring you on to have this conversation of what are some of these other possibilities that are out there if you're in that situation that you want to do something different, or you're unhappy with the way your public school is, or whatever school you're going to, and you want to do something different. And so these conversations help, again, just highlight the possibilities.
Yes.
And then it's still your job as the parent of this child to listen to your gut and say, what's right for my family, what's right for me, what's right for my child. There's no judgment here.
No.
Again, the whole point of this is just to highlight possibilities, open up the conversation to help give you more ideas and potentialities to what works with your family, because you know best. And that's what I really want to get across is you as the mom, you as a partner in your relationship, or however you're doing this, you really are the one that knows is that it's bringing that out of you. And that's why I brought Kristina on here, so we can share some of those ideas for you. So let's just dive into some of those alternatives and possibilities out there.
Well, some of the possibilities, of course, is keeping your child in your regular school district, right? And then going and working with the teachers, the admin, and things like that to make small changes in the classroom or around your child's education that will make it better for your child. And for some places that you have maybe smaller class sizes, maybe you have really flexible admin and teachers that can really do some of those changes and make it work for your child, that's absolutely perfect, right? But even if you have to keep your child in public school, guess what? When your child is back home with you, you can make so much of a difference, right? The activities they are in, or the things that you do with your child, the values that you teach and you talk to them with. Part of it is don't just let them go on screens when they get home. Let's engage and have them be part of the family and help out. So there's so much education that can be done around the public school if you need to keep them in the public school. But there's so many other choices. There's the online model. So you're bringing them home and doing the online school, and you're being their support, like I was talking about a little while ago. There's the full-on homeschooling where you do everything, the curriculum and the planning and this and that and everything. And it sounds really daunting, but it's not once you realize that you don't have to fill up a 6-hour or 7-hour block like the regular public school system. And that's one of the things I want to talk about is the schooling flexibility, but we'll get there in a second. But another way is there's lots of people who still are doing the pods. A pod is where during COVID, people were pulling their kids out of the public school and things like that. And they were just basically using a small group, maybe hiring a teacher, or maybe having a group of moms share the responsibilities and do a pod of schooling. Or there's lots of co-op groups. So there's so many choices now because people got really creative and innovative around education during this thing called COVID. And it can be a bad thing, but I like looking at the silver lining and going, hey, a lot of things came out of it, as well as knowing that our children are ready for something different. They're not all suited for sitting in that classroom for 6 or 7 hours a day in desks. Some of them need to learn differently, and it opened our eyes to that whenever we had them at home.
I totally agree with that. I mean, again, it just comes back to your child best, your family best. And so as Kristina's talking about the different options, look at whatever one just sparked in your head from those different options, and maybe just start exploring that option and see if it's a possibility for your family. Like she just listed like 5 or 6 different models there that are possibilities. And if that one of them sat with you all of a sudden, like, oh, that's a great idea. That's the one to follow, and see if it's something that will work for your family, and getting the help and the ideas, and realizing that we don't have to do it alone.
Correct.
Which is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want to provide this, why Kristina's doing it too, is we want to provide that community when you decide that that's something that works for you.
Yeah, that is completely it. It's like, even though I'm saying that the parent is the first best teacher, and they absolutely are, that doesn't mean that you have to do it alone, just like you said. Think about this. If you're a business owner, do you do business alone? No, you have a community, you have a network, you have coaches that help you, right? If you're a speaker, you have coaches that help you. If you are an entrepreneur and starting up a business, you just don't go start something. Usually you do some research and you get coaches and you have people to help you, right? So I'm not saying you're doing this alone. I am saying that you have the great intuition, but don't be afraid to ask for help. And that, again, where like a specific coach, like Vibrant Family, comes in, or those co-ops, those pods, those groups of other parents who have been doing homeschooling for a while, great resources. As a matter of fact, there's a learning center, a tutoring company in my hometown here in Hillsborough, and they actually say that they provide homeschool support. So what that means is if you don't know a class or a topic very well, you can go to them and they find the educator who knows it, and then you can work together to take your child to that learning center to do those topics, right? It's kind of like a co-op model, but it's more of a paid model, but it still is the same idea. You can get help with those things.
Well, again, I think it comes back to the word genius.
Yeah.
Because you can teach your kids the things that are innate to you, that you feel inspired to do, and the ones where you're just like, not my deal.
Yeah.
Co-ops, learning centers, other aspects to do it, or like you said, the mom community, where maybe there's a mom that has that math genius in her that English isn't her genius, or vice versa, or whatever. It's coming back to, what am I good at? What do I want to instill them? And then also figuring out what is your kids good at, because you want to make sure you get them the mentoring. So for me, like, for instance, with my son cooking, I go to a certain level. And if he wants to do more than that, I'm like, you need someone who knows more than I do. And that's where all of this comes into play, is finding those aspects for each of your kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what are some, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, let's dive into that timing of a little bit that I was talking about just a few minutes ago. So that whole flexibility. So that's the other genius about homeschooling and this whole community idea, is that you have now a flexible schedule. Now, do you want to go crazy where you don't ever have anything planned? No. What I'm talking about flexible is that, if your child learns best in the early morning, and you can get up and help them do their major academic learning, reading, writing, math in the early morning when they're wide awake and ready to absorb all of that, then you do that. If you realize that your child is actually an afternoon person, they like to sleep in, they need their sleep. It's not because their sleep schedule's messed up that they're staying up until midnight, right? But they truly are a natural sleep in kind of person. Then you can do that reading, writing, that heavy academics in the later afternoon when they're more receptive to it. And then you're like, oh, but what do I fill the rest of the day with? That's the beauty of this. You get to take them to their swimming lessons or their music lessons or something during the day when it's not so crowded. You get to go do activities like museums and parks and all of these other life skill kinds of learning places, right? During the day, throughout those other times. And you just get to build your life around and with your child. And we've seen so many times where homeschool families actually are coming closer together. And that's another one of my passions, is that our families are in trouble right now. There are so many families who are dysregulated. There's so many families who are like, I'm on the go all the time and I can't find any peace and I can't slow down and this and that. And it's like, it's time for us to really take a look at our families and make sure they are a core priority if you're going to have a family. So that whole flexibility thing is just amazing. And then, you're not tied to the school schedule. Do you want to take a week off and go take a family trip? You don't have to worry about school anymore, because you can either take school with you, or you can take a week off and fill it in later. Maybe you have the holidays, super big family, super really busy. Guess what? Turn your learning into all that holiday stuff, all of those traditions and things, and then pick up the academics a little bit later. You have time. Now, you don't necessarily want to go year round with your education, with your academics, but you could, because now you have this flexibility because you're not tied to that school schedule. So
now, how do moms who also feel that who need a second income, how do they work that into the schedule? Would you suggest?
And that's kind of the beauty of that flexibility also, right? If you have to work part-time, then whenever you're at work. Of course, your child is with another caregiver, hopefully a family member or something. But then that schooling, of course, gets flexed to the time when you are home with them. A lot of mompreneurs are working from home. They are able to work from home and schedule it. So it's one of those things where, okay, guys, guess what? I have to be at this meeting at this time. So you're going to go do this activity or this lesson while I'm on my meeting, and I'll check in with you when I'm done. So it's possible. And some people even ask, well, what if I'm a single mom? It's harder, but it can be done. And it kind of depends on your support network. So yeah, it's definitely doable.
Well, I mean, and again, it comes down to finding that community around you and finding those other moms or that pod or that, because if you're in that pod, then you can also exchange the care with each other.
Correct.
As well.
Yeah.
And they can be working on their schoolwork or whatever it is within that pod, figuring out your work schedule. So again, the whole premise of this is the possibilities of it.
Yeah.
And again, if you're listening and one of these feels, and I'm just going to be repeating this because it is so hard for us to listen to our gut at times. It is so hard to weave out what we've done for so long and say, oh no, I can't do it another way. And so that's what this is really about, is there are other ways. And if one of those is jiving with you, that is time to explore it.
Yes.
And not even that you have to make a decision about it. It's just explore it. See if you can find a pod. See if you can find some kind of online that works for your family. It's just exploration, using curiosity and seeing where you can go with it. And then decide from there. There is no like fast guide, like, oh, it's like gotta do this immediately. But really working out what works for you and your family. And that's what this really comes down to. Like, as you were saying, that families are struggling and having that community and things together. And what are the aspects that you want to do to create your family stronger? And how to do it. And as you were saying, so for me personally, we do stay with the school system, but then we're figuring out the after school curriculum that goes with their geniuses, and my daughter's choosing to do swim, and at times even working with my son. And I realized he was struggling again reading. So I'm like, are you ready to do that again with mom? Like, do you want to do that, or do you need to find someone else? And like having those conversations with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, like you were saying, to find the child's genius and really help them. That's the other part of the beauty of this whole, I call it education at home. Homeschooling is cool, but there's that kind of negative connotation from in the past. People haven't really caught up with a whole new idea. So I like calling it education at home. But I mean, when you're able to tap into your child's genius, what they really, really like, and when you're in control of the curriculum, how you can turn reading and math and writing lessons into their topic, what they're really interested in, right? When they get hands-on experience, maybe they're a cooking genius like your son, right? All of a sudden, math is in the kitchen most of the time because you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, all those different things in the kitchen, right? And
with
then
fractions.
Yeah, fractions, lots of fractions. But you can, interweave it into what you're already doing. And then a lot of homeschooling families, it's really interesting how their child suddenly kind of gets that entrepreneur bug, right? It's like, oh, well, I want to try to build this, or I want to try to sell this, or I want to try to do this business. And then all of a sudden, guess what? Schooling becomes all about their business, all the math that they need, all the reading that they need, all the math that they need. And they're excited to do it because it's something that they really want to do. So you're instilling that love of learning in them. And that's what we need in our children. And even us. I mean, most of us who are here, we have that love of learning. And that's why we're here, because we're like, I want to find out more. I want to learn more. There's something more I need to know so that I can share with other people. So when you can educate at home in this way, you don't have near the struggles and fights and things like some parents have of trying to get their kid up out of bed and to school on time. And I don't want to be there. Or, oh, it was boring today. All those kinds of things.
What'd you do? Nothing.
Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. That's the key. Well, and that, whenever we're working with families, we really try to talk to them about that whole communication thing, is that you can't just ask a kiddo after school, what'd you do today? Nothing. you're not going to get anywhere, right? You have to ask those deeper, more connecting questions.
What are some questions you suggest?
Good. I was just going to do that. Yeah. So like when they come home, it's like, what was something that you felt proud of today? What was something that kind of bothered you today or you were frustrated with today? What was something that you got to help somebody else with today? It really lets them think about a specific instance instead of the whole day. And then they can really usually start verbalizing back. Now, granted, if you haven't had these conversations with your child, getting them started is going to take a little while, but get them used to having those kinds of questions come at them and talk about it. When they're not distracted, your phone has to be down, their phone or device has to be down, and you need to actually be paying attention, right? So maybe the car ride home, if you pick them up every day, or maybe when you're doing the dishes. Oh, wait, no, kids doing dishes? Yes, they should be doing dishes with you. That's part of this whole life skills thing. All of that stuff. Yeah. Those kinds of questions that really don't let them just kind of blow it off of like, I don't know, because you're getting into they're positive, they're happy. And then also, redirecting that. What was your frustration of the day? How do you think you could have changed it, or what might have made that frustration a little bit better? So then you're still going another step deeper.
I love that so much. And just the different perspective on how to ask them. And again, I would suggest, as she said, like, as Kristina was saying, all those questions, did one stick out to you? Just start with the one. And then if that one's, try it for a couple of days. If that's not going, try a different one then. But like you said, if you haven't had the conversations with before, coming with a lot of things at them at once will probably just shut them down right away.
Yeah.
But start off slowly. Or one of the ones we like to do is, what's something funny that happened today?
Love it. Yep.
And just something that would break the ice a little bit more and start off smaller to get them going. At dinner time, I think I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but we tried to do, I forgot where I got it from, but it wasn't that long ago. We do one success, one struggle, one funny moment, and one thing we're grateful for the day. And we don't always do it, but every once in a while we'll get everyone to do it, and especially when we're sitting down. But again, it's more, the more we communicate with each other, the more often we do it. And sometimes putting those rituals behind it or those traditions behind it. So that's like, oh, that's expected of me. And like, okay, now I'll share. Yeah. And then they'll start talking. And then there'll be days like the other day where my daughter was like, no, I don't want to do that today. I just want to talk. Okay. You're still talking to me. I'll take it.
Right. Exactly. And that goes also into like either a weekly meeting or at least a monthly meeting where you really just sit down and spend time as a family talking about what's happening with your family. How are things going? Is there something that somebody's upset about that they really need to get off their chest in a safe space in that family meeting where people aren't going to get upset because they know this is the space that is supposed to be, hands off. Everything gets to be explained and shared, right? So, really trying to bring those kinds of things into the family is super, super important.
It really is just bringing a little bit of structure and trying to figure out what works for you. So for instance, for the family meeting, we tried, I did do another episode on that as well. And we tried to like rename it. I think we called it Family Medley. That wasn't going. And we tried to follow their format, and that wasn't quite working. What it came down to is at least weekly, we'll go through what the schedule is. Okay. And then we'll weave in, for us, like I said, we'll do that a lot of times, is talking about those specifics. And the other thing we did take is sometimes we'll shower each other with gratitude. But again, when you're hearing these ideas, the ones that speak to you, try them. If they don't work, that's okay. Try something different. See what does work for your family. I really want to make family values, but that has not happened. We did end up making family expectations. That worked for us. But like trying to get family values just like was like pulling teeth. I'm like, okay, pick your battles.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and lots of times I find with family values, it really does need to come from the parents at first and let the kids kind of get used to it. And then they might say, oh, hey, can we tweak this one a little bit this way? Or can we tweak this one? Or can we add this? Right. Because, values is one of those more kind of ambiguous kind of ideas, I think, where expectations are very concrete. I will have my laundry done at this time. I will put my shoes on this space, right? When you get down to the nitty gritty.
I will preface this in there was more getting my husband on board to get the backup to get the kids in. So
yeah,
but you do what you can.
Yeah, the spouse conversation is super, super important. That was one thing that I want to talk about, is because there are lots of spouses who are like, there's no way that we can do this in our home. it can't happen. I'm afraid the children won't be socialized enough. I'm afraid the children won't learn what they need to learn. I'm afraid that, we're going to get behind, all those different things. And they just don't see the full picture. And that's a tough one, because you really need to be on board together, because one person will need some help, right? But I think the best thing to do is make sure that if you can get them to listen to some podcasts where people are talking about how successful homeschool is, maybe even having them talk to a coach who helps families, just so they can hear it from a person who's helping other families and make it kind of happen. And again, you can't make somebody do what they don't want to do. But if their eyes are open to the possibilities, if they keep hearing the things, sorry, be a little sneaky. Start playing the podcast in the background when they're in the room, because sooner or later they're going to start hearing something, right? Exactly. But that, all of those kinds of things, you do need that support, but it can happen. Yes. And even if they're like a little wishy-washy, oh, I'm not sure, maybe we'll give it a try. Jump in, get your support, and make it a glowing success. And then let them say, oh yeah, you're right, we can do this. And you'll see them kind of come and sneak in and jump on board as well. And that leads to my other thing that a lot of people are worried about. My kids won't be socialized. My kids will be the weird ones. My kids won't know how to interact with that, this and that. And it is so amazing now how it is so the opposite. Our kiddos, unfortunately, in public schools are not being socialized. Unfortunately, lots of times they're being traumatized because of what's happening in the schools. Now, there are some amazing, beautiful schools out there. I'm not bashing all schools, right? I came from a pretty amazing school. But there are also schools that, just can't handle everything that's happening with them, whether it's the neighborhood or whatever. And the schools, the kids are being, okay, I'm going to be honest and vulnerable here. I've heard of schools in my own school district right here where I live, where kids are throwing things and yelling and doing things all day long. And the kiddos who are trying to learn can't learn because of what's going on. I'm not blaming anybody, but it's a mess out there, right? And so parents and people need to know that what's going on in their schools. Go visit, go see, right? And so then think about, how is your child getting socialized with that kind of stuff happening around them all day long? And then you're sending them out onto the playground with other kids their age who don't necessarily know their rules and boundaries either. So how is that socializing them, right? Are they really learning from that, or are they maybe being kind of traumatized from that? And then let's flip it now to the education at home. You get to take them to those music lessons, swim lessons, taekwondo lessons, whatever. And they're with kids who want to be there and who are having the same kind of values, the same kind of fun experiences, right? And that means that they are having a better socialization experience. You get to take them to the food bank or the community center or religious groups that you want them to go to. And again, they're with people and adults who care and are there, and they are being socialized in a better way. You get to show them how to talk. If you're an entrepreneur family, they end up going to the places that you go to, right? You get to go to big business meetings or entrepreneur meetings, and they get to go see the spark of all these people who want to grow, right? And so the socialization, and a lot of those kids will walk up to an adult with no problem because they've had those experiences, those life skill experiences.
I know we're running out of time, but I have one more question before we dive into our last 5 questions. But part of my struggle with homeschooling was that a lot of people I feel like it has to look the same as school at home. And I know that that's not true, but I wanted your expertise on that and some tips on maybe convincing the other spouse or whoever thinks that way of what it really will look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And that's one of the biggest things, because a lot of people, and I use unschooling a little bit different than the traditional or the other people who use unschooling, but I say you really do need to unschool. You have to think and get out of the school mindset, because even though they will have academic time, they will have learning, it won't necessarily be the same worksheets, the same computer programs, those kinds of things, right? Because you're taking those learning experiences now and bringing them into the real life experiences. You're bringing them into, when we go do the laundry, What can we learn? Guess what? There's a whole bunch of shapes in the laundry when you're starting to fold it and stuff like that. And so kids are learning shapes and dimensions and all those kinds of things in that way, right? Or maybe they need their math they're doing in the kitchen with the cooking, right? All those kinds of things. So yeah, homeschool education at home does not look like a traditional school. You don't have to have them sitting at a table in a chair learning. Matter of fact, part of the coaching that I did with the online school, the parents were like, well, my child really doesn't like to write. It's like, awesome. Let's make it fun. Grab the Sharpie, or not the Sharpie, the dry erase markers, and let them go write all over the sliding glass door. Let them write their story on the windows. And they were excited about that. Give them the sidewalk chalk. Let them go out and write their story on the sidewalk chalk. And they're like, but I can't turn that into you. It's like, can you take a picture? Well, yeah. Awesome. Take a picture, send it in, and I know that they're writing. And hopefully you'll be able to type up what they wrote or something, and I'll know, when I had to grade it, but you're grading or whatever, or the coach is grading. So, you can get around that kind of stuff. But yeah, it doesn't look like regular school. Please don't make it look like regular school.
Speaking of window painting, during COVID, we actually took the paint that you can paint on windows and actually made a giraffe from the first floor to the second floor.
Wow.
Well, you just had the bottom, and then you see the face up in the second on the
That's
up there.
awesome.
But just the creative things that you can do when doing art and thinking outside the box.
Yes.
And diving into the things that you want to instill in them. But then also, if they're interested in other things, finding that aspect. So we're definitely running out of time. So we're going to dive straight into our 5 questions. So number 1 for you, Kristina.
Oh boy.
Share your favorite book or resource that has had a significant impact on you as a mama.
Wow. That's a little bit hard because my boys are all grown up. They're in their 30s, but that's okay. We'll think back. Actually, it was a program that I taught and used. It's called Love and Logic. So there is a group out there called Love and Logic. And it was a really big breakthrough whenever I realized that there were different kinds of parenting skills and which parent I was. And it's like, well, let's go learn a little bit more. And then there was something called the broken record. I love you, and we're doing da, 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 da. I love you. And it cuts down on the fighting, because all of a sudden your child knows this is a non-negotiable, even though they have lots of choices other times. This is a non-negotiable. I love you, and this is da 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 da.
So I love you, and I'm going to repeat that a couple times to remind my head to use that more often. I love you, and it's great, because then a lot of times they think they have that thing like the fear of not being loved.
Yeah.
And so the repetition and repeating and making sure that this isn't that. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. So number 2, what is a special family tradition or ritual that brings joy and connection to your family?
This time of year is the Christmas tree. Sorry, this is going to get me. All the special ornaments that go up that I've collected over the years for the boys.
We were just doing that the other day, and I was like, no, well, I'll give you a moment. I'll tell this story while you're collecting yourself. But yeah, let it out. It's all good. Show up as who you are. And that's what this is all about, is let's not hide it anymore. There's no reason to say sorry. You know what? Let's experience these feelings and share them together and share the memories of it. And my daughter was trying to put up the plain bulbs and stuff. I'm like, no. Mm-hmm. All the special ornaments need to go first. Then you can decorate whatever's left. So then she's like, okay, Mom, put out the ones you want up first. And then I'll put them on. And so that's what we did. And so it was mostly me and my 7-year-old who decorate the tree this year. Right. It was just fun doing those things. But yeah, it is such a special moment. Yeah. If there's anything else you want to share about that, or?
No, just lots of good memories.
Good. Number 3, we'll throw you for a tailspin. This is where I'm really opening up the question. This is going to turn into a book or blog or something.
Yeah.
But this idea of, I call out moms all the time as busy moms. We define ourselves as busy moms, and we answer the question, how are you doing? I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. So I want to, first of all, redefine that in any shape way. Some guests are redefining the question. Some are redefining the answer. Take it however you feel compelled to share with us.
Yeah, that's become just a throw out there term, busy, busy, busy. And maybe redefining it or restating it as, I'm looking forward to this, and maybe I can take a break when this, right? So really kind of defining your roles, I'm doing this and I can't wait to, or I'm looking forward to this. That's what popped into my head. And I heard a speaker yesterday and they said, we really do pack our kids and our schedules way too full. Our societal expectations right now are just way off. We really need to make sure we have that quiet time, that downtime. Pick the one activity for your child, not 3 or 4, right? The statistic that person gave was really amazing. Is like our kids are doing like 50 to 60 hours of quote unquote work a week between school and activities and things. And we as adults can't hardly handle that. So why do we think our kids can handle that? So maybe redefining what busy is and how much busy has to be.
Oh, I love that. And putting that perspective of 50 hours for kids. But when you think about a school day plus whatever activities that they're doing or whatever, and that's why for activities for me, they have to be kid driven. Like my daughter, they were trying to push her into the next level. Well, they just were offering her the next level and she was just not committing to wanting to go enough. And she wasn't there. I'm like, time and money. Like if your heart's not in it, then we'll wait till it is.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, it leads us to number 4. Describe what genius means to you and what it feels like to live in your genius zone.
Describing is easier. It's just when things flow. I mean, things feel good. You know that you're doing something that is productive and feels good. And eventually, hopefully, is all getting out to other people and helping other people as well. So that genius is just really finding that passion or that thing you're really, really good at. So maybe you're not super passionate about it, but you're really good at it. Can I just share a quick example? And one of those things for me was organizing, because as a teacher, I organized so much, right? I would end up at a family event or somebody's wedding or something like that. And I would realize that behind the scenes, things weren't just going very well, right? Things were like all kind of combobulated. And I would just kind of step in and it's like, can we put this over here? Can we put this over here? Can we make the line go this way? And then a couple of people finally just asked me, is like, can you just come and just like make sure all that stuff runs smoothly? And part of that came from my classroom because I had to make sure my classroom flowed well, that organization. So yeah, genius whenever you just boom there and it makes a difference.
Which is funny. My classroom was always a disaster.
It took some time. But when I realized that 30 kids were going to the computer cart at the same time and all trying to get their Chromebooks out at the same time, that doesn't work, right?
No, it does not.
So it's like, okay, 5 of you go there, 5 of you go over to your bookshelf over there and get your books, and then we'll swap and, just kind of rotating it around, making it run smoother.
I love that. And then our last one is, how do you encourage your child or any children to explore new skills and passions to be in their genius? And we've talked a little bit about that, but whatever final takeaways you want to give on that.
Well, you really just need to give them experiences. And so that's one of the things that I think was really, really helpful whenever we can educate at home, because you can go share and give them lots of different experiences. And if they click with something, then you kind of encourage and see if it goes farther. If it doesn't click with them, then you go and you do something different. So basically just giving them experiences so they can find what clicks with them and then encouraging can't help it going.
I love that so much. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on here. And again, this was all about exploring possibilities. And if any of them seem like something worth exploring to you, to explore that new idea. And that's what this podcast is all about, is just giving us moms new ideas to do it together, how we can make motherhood more fun, how we can inspire our kids more. And we'll see you next time on the Mama Genius Hub podcast. Still tongue-tied on that. Maybe it's the wording. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later. Bye.